Well, greetings and salutations, good people of the internet. My name is Big Lou, and welcome to my workshop. This project is going to be super ambitious. It's actually going to be building a playroom table for my nieces. My sister reached out to me a little while ago and said, hey, I'd like to build them something, or get them something rather, play table with storage bins options type of thing so that they can have it in their playroom and have a surface that is bigger as they get older. So that's what we're going to do. It's actually going to be a lot of fun. Going to have some dadoed shelves and stuff, some techniques and things that I haven't done before in the workshop. Plus we're going to spray paint it. A lot of work to do. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time running my mouth. Let's go ahead and get to work. Okay, so I've already taken the liberty of roughing out on the track saw like I've done in several projects before, but if you want to see how that looks, it looks like this. It's me using a track saw, no big deal. Got it all cut to rough dimensions, and I will have a cut list for sale on my website if you want to throw a couple of bucks and build this for yourself. That being said, we're going to take these rough pieces, get them onto the table saw, cut them back to the exact dimensions that we need, and then we can start worrying about cutting those dados for those shelves, because that's going to be, well, fun. Let's get to it. Okay, so real quick, before we get into all of this, something that I forgot to mention before we started dealing with the bandsaws, make sure you use a test piece to make sure that everything's lined up correctly. I just have this piece of scrap plywood that I cut out to make sure that all of my fences and stuff were lined up accordingly. I just want to point that out. Before you actually put blade to your finished project, use a test piece. Pro tip. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, literally, no matter what your design is, however good it is in the computer or on paper or wherever it is that you're actually designing things, you always want to mock things up. At least I do. I always want to see it practically, especially when you're using something that you buy from a store to fit into something that you're building. So these are the containers that I'm building to put into the little cubby holes, and I want to make sure that I'm spacing these shelves out exactly the right spacing so that these containers will fit in there so that we can have the proper sizing and the shelves will fit and it's not wasted space or they're too small or whatever. So I always want to mock things up before I start cutting things up. Again, it goes back to the same test piece mentality. So my nieces are relatively hard on some of the furniture that they play with. I'm going to be routing out some dados for these shelves to go into. Now, I could just screw and glue and brad nail these together and they'll be perfectly fine, but I want to build some better technique, a more advanced technique, I should say, and it's going to be an justification for me to play with some different types of joinery and using dados and stuff like that. We live in the US, and 3/4 inch plywood is not exactly 3/4 of an inch. Go figure. Whiteside router bits makes these plywood bit sets that are undersized just enough to make a dado for 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 3/4 inch plywood to go into. So that's what I'm going to be using. I'm going to set up some fences and some guide rails and mark everything out and dado out our grooves. Dado out our grooves. A dado runs this way, a groove runs that way. You know what I'm talking about. You're going to see what I'm talking about as I do it. Let's get to it. Okay, so that undersized router bit really does a great job at making sure that it's the exact right size to fit a dadoed groove. Dadoed slot. Grooves go this way, dados go this way, or vice versa. Anyway, whatever it is, you know what I'm talking about. So I've got it mocked up to get the exact dimensions of how wide I need to cut the shelves, because I left those long because I didn't know exactly what the dimensions were going to be once I routed the grooves out, or the dados rather, for the shelf slots. So now that I've got those cut, I can line up and sand the interior, get it some finish prep started, cut the shelves, get it assembled, and then we can start ready for paint. The dado slots on the middle set piece didn't line up exactly how I wanted them to, just because doing it the way that I did, getting it consistently, was a challenge. If I had had a dado set in my table saw, it would have been exact. But the way that I did it is going to be just fine. You're never going to notice it because I'm going to put trim over it, and it's going to be fine. Enough of my yammering. We still got a lot of work to do. Let's get to it. Okay, so I've got the whole frame, or the carcass body, whatever you want to call it, all put together, and I've filled in all of these screw holes with some wood filler. This is the kind, it's made by DAP. I'll link to it down in the description below. But it's pink when you fill it in, and then once it's fully dried and ready to be sanded, it will turn just wood colored, and you can know that it's ready to be fully cured, and you can sand it and do whatever you want to with it and paint it and all that good stuff. I filled in a little bit, and then I'm just kind of layering it. I've got a second filling in here And then once this is cured, I can go ahead and get this ready, and then we can start worrying about painting and stuff like that. But while this is curing, I'm going to just go ahead and start getting the trim ready. And for the trim, I'm going to be using this Select Pine. This is just some 1x4 that I got where I got the plywood was just at Home Depot, but you can get it wherever you get, wood supplies and stuff, Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards, wherever it is that you buy lumber. So I'm going to rip these down to 2 inches for the top and 1 inch for all the rest of it. So we can get that done, cut it size on the chop saw, and then we can put it here, and then we'll use the the wood filler to fill in all the seams and stuff on the trim, and then we'll be ready for a couple of coats of paint, and then we'll be ready to get this thing over to my sister's house for my nieces, because this thing's been in my shop for far too long, because life happens and sometimes projects get put on hold. So anyway, let's get to it. Okay, so we are ready to paint. I've got the whole thing sanded to 220 grit, and I used the vacuum to get most of the 98% of the dust off of it. And then I went over it with a tack cloth to just make sure that it's completely dust free. You can use a tack cloth for the whole thing, but these are not cheap. Well, they're not expensive, but they still cost something and they're not reusable. So I use the vacuum to get most of it, and then a tack cloth just kind of to fine tune it. And I can use this on multiple projects and stuff like that. It just, it's gotta go wash my hands now. Anyway, I'm gonna get set up to paint because I'm not gonna paint in my good fancy big loose shirt. I'm gonna put on a shirt that I really don't care about. Gonna set up some, Dexter Kill Room drop cloth stuff, and then we can start painting. So let's get to it. Well, there it is. It's all done. I'm getting ready to load it up and head over to my sister's. And not surprise, they've known it's coming for a long time because I started this thing back in December. And it is now, well, the middle of March. So, best laid plans of mice and men. Crap happens. Anyway, if you're wondering why I didn't show a whole lot of footage of me painting it, it's because I did an entire separate video about painting it and a review of the Wagner Flexio 5000 paint system, and I'll have a link to that video down in the description below, and in a card at the end of this video once that video comes out, which should be in the next week or so. So make sure you get subscribed and have your bell notifications and all that good stuff tuned on for that if you want to see it. So now that that's all done, stay tuned and let's head over and watch the kids react to this because they haven't seen it. They've only seen a couple of pictures of it and stuff like that. So it'll be really fun to watch my nieces react to this thing. So let's load it up and head over. Yep.
Oh my gosh! I heard what this is, but I didn't expect for this to look like it.
What did you think it was going to look like?
I thought it was going to be like standing up.
Standing up? Well, you're only standing that tall. So, do you like it though?
Yes.
I
love it.
You love it. That's great.
Yeah.
So, what are you gonna play with it? What are you gonna do with it?
So, I could use one bin for putting stationary things, one for craft supplies and one for Legos.
That's right. There's lots of bins. There's lots of different things you can do with it.
Lots and lots of bins.
Yep. Do you like it?
Yes. There's more bins on the other side.
That's right.
They're the same bins.
Yes, they are.
And the baby's crawling and starting to try to think.